I've now been using Beehiiv for my email list for a total of 12 months. Every month of the last 12 months, I've been using Beehiiv ads to monetize this newsletter. And I've done a couple of other videos showing you how much I made my first month just from Beehiiv ads, as well as 9 months in. So now we're going to look at my total earnings for the first 12 months on Beehiiv, and if I think it is a good way for you to monetize a newsletter right now. Okay, so as you can see, I am on the screen here for ad within my Beehiiv account. You can see that just this month alone, I've already made a big whopping $4. That is for one email send so far. You can also see here that I have 2 pending advertisement opportunities for this newsletter. You can see how low they pay per click. We got $1.25 for this one, $1.60 for this one. This calendar here on the side shows you how many days I already have ads scheduled for my newsletter. You can also see that underneath here. I can show you what this particular one looks like because it does pay a little more, but this is not something you're going to get rich off of, right? So $2.40 per click. Some of the ads in the past have paid out by impressions. I've had a few recently. I don't know if there's any in my sidebar here. Those don't really pay that well either. Usually, I think around $5 per 1,000 opens. And the way that Beehiiv measures their opens actually changed a few months back, as well as what is considered a qualified click, which we'll get into in a little bit. But just right off the bat here, I want to show you immediately how much I have made in the last 12 months. So right here we have earned in total. Now, one caveat here is this does include this $4 from this month. I know there's not a huge discrepancy here, so it is a little less than that. And I actually think on my next screen I'm going to show you that I did put this total with the $4, so we'll have to just subtract that mentally. And just a refresher, if you've not seen the previous updates I've done, here is what it looks like in terms of how much you earn per ad, who is paying you, things like that. You can see this one right here was one of the ones, it's got the weird number here. That was one of the ones that paid per opens. And you might be looking at this and thinking, wow, like how small is her email list? It's not so much a matter of how small my email list, but how these opens are being tracked. I have about 1,700 to 1,800 people on my list at any given time in the last 12 months. I do regularly clean my list, so I basically a lot more people are opening than is being tracked, but that's neither here nor there for this video. Now let me pop over to Canva here where I have written out how much has been made each month. June last year was my first month where I made just over $200, and you can see that things were kind of escalating pretty well. $769 here in October is how much this newsletter made. Then in December, again, close to $700. I remember thinking in December that if things continued the way they were going, that this particular newsletter was on track for $1,000. But then you'll see things dropped in January, right? And then February is just insane. And one little thing, if you're not on my newsletter or haven't checked it out, I send emails daily. Now, I wasn't sending daily from the beginning. I think it was sometime in August when I switched over to doing a daily send. So, February, of course, is a shorter month, but 28 days and $95, that kind of math is not great math, right? So I have not disclosed anywhere yet how much I made in the last 3 months. I've only disclosed what's been made from Beehiiv ads within the first 9. So I'm just going to delete this little gray box here to show you what has been made by my newsletter in the last 3 months. Okay, so you can see that things went up a little bit, from that crazy low of $95. We had $225.51 in March, then we dropped again to $103.72 in April. Then we started rising back up a little bit last month with $151.08. A couple things about these numbers. In June of 2024, when my first month on Beehiiv made over $217, then we fast forward to February of this year, $95.20. This February, I had to send every day of the month. In June of 2024, I only had a handful of sends. What's very interesting to me about this is how great things started versus where we are now. If you watch my video that I did for what I earned in the first 9 months, you'll see that I talked about that Beehiiv did some changes in terms of, what they consider a valid, click on your ads. That includes things like how long you interact with the advertiser's page. So it's not like just an IP address or anything like that. If your person who's clicking seems to be clicking too soon in the email, then it does count, it's like not valid. They don't count it as valid for whatever reason. There's probably other things that they have going on, but basically what I saw was a drastic drop in the number of valid clicks in my newsletter, as soon as they made that change, and that has continued. So why did the earnings increase? Well, in February, they also didn't send me ads every single day. Most months they have sent me enough ads, not only to have 1 ad per newsletter per day, but 2 to 3 ads per newsletter per day. I try not to do more than 2 ads though, just because, personally as a reader, I don't enjoy that kind of experience. So basically I try to keep it to no more than 2. But you can see the effect in these recent months of what has happened in terms of them changing how they are, counting valid clicks and things like that. And that's important because that affects how much you are going to earn. If you had just looked at my first 6 months on Beehiiv, you would think, wow, if I get a newsletter with, say, 3x the number of people on it that she does, then I can make a really good amount of money each month. But then you look at my last few months and you're thinking, is it really worth my time, right? So now I'm going to remove the black box down here. It's going to show you the total earnings again. Like I said, I think I included that $4. We'll see. But I also went ahead and ran the average so you can see how much I averaged out per month. Oops, let's try that again. Okay. So I don't think I actually did copy over let me switch back real quick. See if I got the wrong number there or the right number. So what I have is the actual correct number, so that's good. So this was the total across 12 months, last 12 months, and the average was just under $400 a month. And when we look at that, we think, well, that's not terrible, except for the fact that I do email every single day. So if you were emailing every single day, that's not a great hourly rate if you're trying to do this to, basically make income from your email list. But this doesn't tell the whole picture, right? Because Beehiiv did change, how they are counting, what is a verified or a valid click on those ads. So if we look at the average per month since they made that change, it looks a lot different. So let's remove this last box. So the average per month, just including those months, not even $150 a month. And like I said, I send every single day. So I think if you are looking at Beehiiv and Beehiiv ads as a way to, earn a reasonable amount of money from your email newsletter, it's just not basically something I think you should do anymore. Sure, you can, run lead, ads on Facebook to get more people on your list. Like I said, mine usually is around anywhere from 1,600 to 1,800 a month, number of subscribers. So, you 5x that, you're obviously making 5x the 143.88 there a month. And maybe you end up with an audience who is more into clicking on ads than I have. So maybe you basically are going to get more money with a smaller number just because we have different audiences. Even with that in mind, I don't think most people are going to send a newsletter every single day like I have been. So while I think, this time last year, running a newsletter on Beehiiv and monetizing with Beehiiv ads was a perfectly viable thing that you could do and probably make pretty decent money doing it, I don't really see that being the case for people right now. I would not advise anyone, to say, start a newsletter business, with the priority being to monetize by Beehiiv ads. But it is really interesting to look at the change just in the averages there, right? Because when you look at only the recent months, it looks a lot different than if you look at the last 12 months as a whole. And honestly, with the changes that Beehiiv has made, I think the average of the recent months is a more accurate representation of what you're going to get. So I'm happy to answer any questions about monetizing a Beehiiv newsletter with Beehiiv ads. But like I said, I don't really see it as something that is going to be really viable for most people, because you only can monetize with Beehiiv ads if you are on one of their paid programs. They actually do have a really cool thing here. Let me pull it up. So you can see right here that each month you can see your ad earnings and how much of it goes towards covering the cost of your monthly subscription. So that's, basically if you're only trying to earn enough money to cover the cost of your subscription, you can probably do that, right? And breaking even like that is a great goal. But if you are looking at it as a way to make a decent amount of income, it's just not there anymore. The other problem that I've seen, at least with my newsletter, actually with all of the newsletters that I run on Beehiiv right now, is there's not a lot of variety in terms of the advertisers you get. Now, just recently, there have been some new ones, like this, I assume it's Picasso is how this is said. This company is fairly new for me, as well as Superhuman AI and Mindstream. But as we look through these reports here, you're going to notice that I'm getting a lot of the same companies, actually pretty much almost all the same companies over and over and over and over. And that's not great, right? Because your audience gets used to seeing the same companies over and over. So, of course your clicks on those ads are going to decline because they're not seeing anything new. And since I have been getting a couple of new things in recent months, those new advertisers that my audience has never seen before, that is earning me more per newsletter send, than these older companies that they've been seeing for, like a year almost. Some of them I think I have had since the very beginning. So that's something that's interesting to think about too, because at least for the niche that my newsletter is in, there's not a lot of diversity, at least in the ads that I'm getting. So you are going to hit that saturation point where your audience has already seen all of the ads. So there's going to be nothing new to show them, except for, here and there, they're going to be trickling out some new things. So that's just something to think about. Like I said, if you are thinking of using Beehiiv to monetize a newsletter with their Beehiiv ads, right now I just don't see it as honestly worth your time. I'm actually looking for a better place to go than Beehiiv, but there just aren't any great options out there, I don't think, right now. So I don't know when I will move to something else, or if I will, just because, it's like picking of all the bad things, which one is the least bad, right? So just something to think about in case, like I said, you are thinking of using Beehiiv as a way to bring in extra income for whatever you're doing. And if you're not already on my newsletter list, you can actually sign up in the link in the description below. That way, if you just want to see like how I run my ads and the type of content that I send out. And like I said, if you have any questions about any of this, running a newsletter on Beehiiv, anything like that, I have a lot of opinions about it, so you can go ahead and leave me a question in the comments below, and I will get back to you with the response when I can.